I am Joshua Sterling, 32 years old, and my own father just laughed in my face while destroying my inheritance. Before I tell you how a piece of taped-up plastic took down a corporate empire and revealed a $12 million secret, tell me where you are watching from in the comments. I read every single one. The smell of lilies always makes me sick now. It reminds me of the rain, the black umbrellas, and the hollow sound of dirt hitting a mahogany casket. We were sitting in the lawyer's office, a high-rise in downtown Chicago that smelled of lemon polish and old money. The funeral had been 2 hours ago. My eyes were still stinging from the wind at the cemetery, or maybe from the tears I refused to let fall in front of them. Across the long oak table sat my father, Richard Sterling. He was checking his Rolex, looking bored. He tapped his fingers on the leather armrest, a nervous tic I'd known since childhood. Next to him was Elena, my stepmother, looking like she was dressed for a Fashion Week runway rather than a funeral. And then there was Hunter, my 25-year-old half-brother, scrolling on his phone, chewing gum with his mouth open. They looked like a family. They looked like the Sterlings on the magazine covers. I was the odd one out. My boots had mud on the heels. My suit was off the rack, a little tight in the shoulders because of the manual labor I do every day. I'm a landscape architect. I work with soil, stone, and trees. My hands are rough. Theirs are manicured. "Let's get this over with, Davis," my father said, his voice booming in the quiet room. "I have a board meeting at 4. The old man didn't believe in brevity, but I do. Mr. Davis, Grandpa's longtime attorney, adjusted his glasses. He looked at my father with a mixture of pity and disdain. "Your father, Mr. Samuel Sterling, was a man of detail, Richard. You would do well to respect that." Richard scoffed. "I respect the assets. Just read the distribution." The will was standard at first. The estate was massive. The portfolio, the stocks, the properties in the Hamptons. It all went to the Sterling Family Trust, of which Richard was the current executor. I saw the greed relax in Elena's shoulders. She squeezed Richard's hand. They were safe. The empire was theirs. Then came my name. "To my grandson Joshua," Mr. Davis read, his voice softening. "The only one who ever asked me about the trees, not the timber value. I leave you the farmhouse in Wisconsin and the 40 acres of nursery land surrounding it." "The dirt farm," Hunter snickered without looking up from his phone. "Nice haul, Josh." I ignored him. That farm was where Mom is buried. It was where Grandpa taught me how to graft apple trees. It was worth more to me than their entire portfolio. And, Mr. Davis continued, reaching into a drawer, "He left you this." He slid a small, plain white envelope across the polished table. It looked insignificant. There was no wax seal, no heavy cardstock. Just a flimsy envelope with "For Joshua" written in Grandpa's shaky handwriting. My heart hammered against my ribs. I reached out and took it. My fingers trembled slightly. I tore it open. Inside was a card. It wasn't a check. It wasn't a deed. It was a black credit card. But it was strange. It was heavy, metal, but scratched and worn around the edges. There were no numbers on the front. No expiration date. No bank logo. Just a small gold chip on the left side and a magnetic strip on the back. It didn't even have my name on it. I frowned, turning it over in my hand. "What is that?" Richard asked, leaning forward, his eyes narrowing. "A gift card." "It's a passkey," Mr. Davis said enigmatically. "Samuel said Joshua would know what to do with it." I didn't know what to do with it. I looked at the lawyer, confused. "Let me see that," Richard demanded. He didn't wait for permission. He snatched the card from my hand. "Hey!" I started to rise, but Richard was already inspecting it. He held it up to the light, turning it over. He let out a barking laugh. This is what he left you. This is garbage, Joshua. It's an old prototype. I remember these. Dad tried to launch a private credit union in the 90s. Failed. This is a souvenir from a failed project." "It was Grandpa's," I said, my voice low. "Give it back." "It's junk," Richard said, his face twisting into a sneer. "Just like that farm. He's mocking you, boy. Don't you see? He's giving the millions to the winners and the trash to the gardener. Richard, stop, Elena said, though she was smiling. No, he needs to learn, Richard said. He stood up, walking toward the shredder in the corner of the office. You need to stop holding on to the past, Josh. It's pathetic. The old man is gone. His sentimental junk goes with him. Don't, I yelled, lunging forward. I was too slow. Richard didn't use the shredder. He saw a pair of long, silver scissors sitting on Mr. Davis's desk. He grabbed them. Snip. The sound was sharp and final. He cut the black metal card right down the middle. There, Richard said, tossing the two halves into the metal wastebasket next to the desk. They clattered against the bottom. Now you don't have to waste your time wondering. Grow up, Joshua. Get a real job. Maybe then you'll earn a real card. The room went silent. Even Hunter stopped texting. Mr. Davis stood up, his face pale. Mr. Sterling, you had no right. I have every right, Richard roared, slamming his hand on the table. I am the head of this family now. I run Sterling Corporation. I decide what has value and what is trash. I stood there, my fists clenched at my sides. The heat was rising in my neck. I wanted to hit him. God, I wanted to hit him. But I looked at his face. Red, sweaty, arrogant. He wanted a reaction. He wanted me to scream so he could call me unstable. He wanted to prove I was the emotional, weak son. I took a deep breath. I walked over to the wastebasket. What are you doing? Digging in the trash. Hunter laughed. Fitting. I reached down and picked up the two halves of the black card. The cut was jagged, but he had missed the gold chip. The chip was on the left half, still intact. I put the pieces in my pocket. You're right, Dad, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Trash belongs with trash. That's why I'm leaving this room. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I just closed it. I took the elevator down 40 floors. I walked out into the Chicago rain. I didn't have an umbrella. I let the water soak my cheap suit. I walked to my beat-up Ford F-150 in the parking garage. I sat in the truck for a long time, staring at the broken card in my palm. Grandpa, what is this? Why give me this if it was just going to break my heart? I drove home to Wisconsin. Took 3 hours. By the time I got to the farmhouse, it was dark. The house was cold. I turned on the lights in the kitchen. I put the two halves of the card on the wooden table. I went to the junk drawer and found a roll of clear Scotch tape. I carefully aligned the edges. I taped them together. It looked ridiculous. A heavy, black metal card, held together by a strip of cheap plastic tape. A toy, I whispered to the empty room. Just a toy. But Grandpa didn't play games. Not like that. I needed to know. I grabbed my keys. There was an old ATM at the gas station 3 miles down the road. It was a dusty, standalone machine that usually only dispensed $20 bills for truckers. I drove there in the dark. The rain had turned to a drizzle. I stood in front of the machine. The neon sign of the gas station buzzed overhead. I looked at the card. It was thick. It might jam the machine. Here goes nothing, I muttered. I inserted the taped card into the slot. I had to wiggle it slightly to get it past the reader mechanism. The machine whirred. It made a clunking sound. I waited for the error message. Card read error. Invalid card. Please contact issuer. The screen flickered blue, then black. Then, bright green text appeared. Pixelated, old-school text. Identity verified. My breath caught in my throat. Welcome, owner. Owner? Not customer. Not user. Owner. The screen changed again. Select transaction. Withdrawal? Account status? Concierge. I pressed account status. I expected to see a 0. Or maybe a few $1,000s Grandpa had stashed away. The machine thought for a second. Then the number flashed on the screen. Balance. Unlimited. I blinked. I rubbed my eyes. The rain was dripping off my nose. Unlimited. Below that, a smaller message scrolled. Warning. Physical integrity of key compromised. Security protocol initiated. Before I could react, the machine spit the card back out. But it didn't just spit it out. The screen flashed red. Please remain at this location. Courier is en route. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I looked at the ATM, then at my phone. I answered. Mr. Sterling? The voice was deep, British, and incredibly calm. It sounded like a butler from a movie, but with an edge of steel. Who is this? I asked. This is Arthur. I manage the Sovereign Trust. We received a distress signal from your founder's key. It appears the structural integrity has been damaged. My dad. He cut it. I stammered. I taped it. I see, Arthur said. He sounded unbothered. Do not worry, sir. The chip is the DNA. The plastic is merely the vessel. Stay exactly where you are. Do not leave the gas station. We are 2 minutes away. 2 minutes? I'm in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin. We are always close, sir. I hung up. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. 2 minutes later, I heard the sound. Not a car. Choppers. The sound of rotor blades chopped through the humid night air, vibrating in my chest. I looked up. A black helicopter, sleek and devoid of any markings, was descending into the empty field adjacent to the gas station. The floodlight from its nose cone swept across the wet asphalt, blinding me for a second before settling on my truck. I stepped back, shielding my eyes. The gas station attendant, a teenager named Mike who usually slept behind the counter, ran out, his jaw dropping. Josh, what the hell did you do? Mike yelled over the noise. I don't know. I yelled back. The chopper didn't shut down. The side door slid open, and 2 men in dark suits jumped out. They didn't run. They moved with a terrifying, efficient precision. They kept their heads low, approaching me. One of them carried a metallic briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. They stopped 3 feet in front of me. Mr. Joshua Sterling? The man with the briefcase asked. He had a scar running through his eyebrow and looked like he ate rocks for breakfast. Yes, I said. Identification, please. I fumbled for my wallet and showed him my driver's license. He scanned it with a small device. A green light beeped. Identity confirmed, he said into his earpiece. He turned to me. Sir, please present the damaged key. I held out the taped-up card. I felt embarrassed. It looked so pathetic in the glare of the helicopter's spotlight. The man took it with white gloves. He inspected the chip. Chip intact. Unauthorized destruction attempt noted. He set the briefcase on the hood of my rusty Ford F-150. He spun the dials on the lock. Click, click, click. The case opened. Inside, nestling in black velvet, was a new card. But it wasn't plastic. It was matte black metal, heavier than the first one. It seemed to absorb the light around it. In the center, etched in subtle silver laser engraving, was my name, Joshua Sterling. Your replacement Centurion founder's key, sir, the man said. Activated and biometric linked. Please place your thumb on the sensor. He pointed to a small square on the corner of the card. I pressed my thumb down. The card actually vibrated slightly, and a tiny LED on the edge pulsed blue once. The trust is secure, the man said. He handed me the card. Felt warm. Mr. Arthur is holding on line 2 of the secure phone in the case. Please take it. He handed me a sleek, buttonless black phone from the case. Hello, I said. Mr. Sterling. Arthur's voice returned, clear as a bell. My apologies for the dramatic entrance. We take the security of the founder's key very seriously. Your grandfather, Samuel, designed the protocols himself. Arthur, what is going on? I asked, leaning against my truck for support. The ATM said, unlimited. That's impossible. It is not a bank account, sir, Arthur explained patiently. It is a sovereign trust. Think of it as a private central bank. Your grandfather didn't just invest in stocks. In the 80s, he was the silent financier behind 3 of the largest tech infrastructure grids in the world. He retained 51% ownership of the patents. Every time someone swipes a credit card in North America, A fraction of a cent goes into the trust. It has been accumulating for 40 years. My knees gave out. I slid down the side of my truck until I was sitting on the dirty pavement. Why? Why didn't he tell anyone? To protect you, Arthur said. And to test them. He knew Richard was reckless. He knew your stepmother was greedy. He wanted to see who would treat a scratched piece of plastic with respect. Only the one who valued the history would earn the future. So, what does this mean? I asked. What can I do? Anything you wish, Arthur said. The liquid assets available to you as of this morning are approximately $480 million. The total asset value exceeds $2 billion. But, Mr. Sterling, there is a catch. There's always a catch, I whispered. You own the debt, Arthur said. What debt? Sterling Corporation. Your father's company. It is not profitable, sir. It hasn't been for 5 years. Your father has been taking massive loans to maintain appearances. He has leveraged the company, the houses, everything. And the primary lender for those high-risk loans is the trust. My brain was spinning. My father wasn't just mean. He was broke. And he was borrowing money from the very grandfather he mocked. Does he know? I asked. No. He dealt with shell companies. He has no idea the trust holds his leash. And now that you possess the key, you hold the leash. I looked at the black card in my hand. The rain hissed against the hot engine of the helicopter. What happens now? That is up to you, sir, Arthur said. You can liquidate him tomorrow. You can foreclose on everything. Or you can wait. I stood up. The anger from the lawyer's office washed over me again. But this time, it wasn't hot and helpless. It was cold and calculating. He called it trash, I said. He cut it up. Then perhaps, Arthur said, his voice dropping an octave. It is time we showed him what trash can do. Arthur, I said, keep the helicopter. I'm driving my truck home. I have work to do in the morning. Very good, sir. I am assigning a security detail to your perimeter. Invisible, of course. Have a good evening. The line went dead. The agents took the phone back, closed the case, saluted me, and were back in the chopper in 10 seconds. They lifted off, disappearing into the night. I stood there in the silence of the gas station. Mike, the attendant, was staring at me from the doorway, holding a half-eaten Twinkie. Dude, Mike whispered, are you like a spy? No, Mike, I said, climbing into my beat-up Ford. I'm just a landscape architect. I drove home, but I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, the titanium card sitting next to a cup of cold coffee. I started researching. I pulled up public records, tax filings, things my wife, Sarah, had taught me how to look for. She was a teacher, but she had a mind for forensic details. When Sarah woke up at 6 a.m., she found me there. Josh? She rubbed her eyes, her hair messy. Did you sleep? No, I said. Honey, sit down. We need to talk about the college fund, and the mortgage, and everything. I told her. I showed her the card. I expected her to scream or dance. But Sarah just cried. She held my face and cried. Not for the money, but for the relief. For the fact that we wouldn't lose the farm. We can't tell them, Sarah said, her eyes fierce. Not yet. Richard will try to steal it. He'll sue. He'll lie. I know, I said. We're going to play this smart. But peace doesn't last long in my family. At 9 a.m., a rumble shook our driveway. It wasn't a helicopter this time. It was the distinct, aggressive roar of a V12 engine. I looked out the window. A lime green Lamborghini Huracan STO was tearing up the gravel of my driveway, kicking stones into my flower beds. Behind it was my father's massive Rolls-Royce Cullinan. They were here. Stay inside, I told Sarah. Like hell, she said, grabbing her coat. I walked out onto the porch. Hunter stepped out of the Lamborghini. He was wearing sunglasses, even though it was overcast. He looked at my house like it was a contagious disease. Richard stepped out of the Rolls-Royce. He looked pristine as always, but there was a tightness around his eyes, a desperation. Morning, Joshua, Richard called out. not bothering to come up the steps. We need to sign some papers. The funeral was yesterday, I said, leaning against the porch railing. I'm grieving, Dad. Go away. This can't wait, Richard said, walking over to one of my prized Japanese maples. He plucked a leaf and crushed it. I have a buyer for this land, a developer. They want to put in condos. The offer is generous. It'll cover your lifestyle for a few years. I'm not selling, I said. You don't have a choice, Hunter yelled. He walked over to a row of saplings I had been grafting for 3 years. He kicked one. The wood snapped. Hey, I shouted, stepping down the stairs. Oops, Hunter smirked. Clumsy me. See, Josh? This place is a dump. You can't maintain it. Sell it. We need the cash. You need the cash. He slipped. We need the cash. Richard shot Hunter a warning look. What your brother means is estate taxes are high, Joshua. We're trying to help you avoid bankruptcy. The lawyers drafted a quitclaim deed. Sign it, and I'll write you a check for $50,000 right now. $50,000. For land worth $2 million. Get off my property, I said low and dangerous. Richard's face hardened. Don't be stupid. I'm the executor. I can tie this land up in probate court for 10 years. You'll bleed dry in legal fees. You'll lose everything. Your wife will leave you. Sign the damn paper. He waved a document in my face. I looked at the document. Then I looked at the snapped sapling on the ground. My hand went to my pocket. I felt the cold metal of the titanium card. No, I said. The word hung in the damp morning air like a gunshot. No. My father blinked. He wasn't used to hearing that word, especially not from me. To Richard Sterling, I was just Josh the gardener. The soft-hearted disappointment who preferred dirt to dividends. He mistook my silence for weakness and my patience for submission. Excuse me? Richard stepped closer, invading my personal space. I could smell his cologne, sandalwood, and expensive scotch. It was the smell of my childhood anxiety. I don't think you understand the situation, son. This isn't a negotiation. I am offering you a lifeline. I understand perfectly, I said, holding my ground. I didn't step back. You're broke, Dad. Hunter burst out laughing, a harsh, cawing sound. Broke? Have you seen the car I drove here in? It costs more than your entire life, loser. Leased, I said calmly, looking at the Lamborghini. And 3 months behind on payments. Hunter's laugh died in his throat. His eyes darted to Richard. Richard's face turned a shade of purple I'd only seen once before, when the SEC audited him in '08. Where did you hear that? That's slander. I could sue you for that. Is it slander if it's true? I asked. I know about the bridge loans, Dad. I know about the liquidity crisis at Sterling Corporation. I know you're trying to sell this farm because you need the capital to cover the margin call on the Chicago Tower. Richard froze. The confidence evaporated, replaced by a cold, predatory focus. You've been talking to Davis, that treacherous old rat. I'll have him disbarred. Davis didn't tell me anything, I said. Then who? Richard snarled. He grabbed my shirt collar. Sarah screamed from the porch. Let go of him, she yelled, rushing down the stairs. Richard shoved me back. I stumbled but caught my balance. Listen to me, you ungrateful little parasite, Richard hissed, pointing a manicured finger in my face. You think you know how the world works because you read a few financial blogs? I built this family. I keep the wolves at the door. If I go down, the name Sterling goes down. And you are going to do your duty. You are going to sign this farm over. Or so help me God. I will bury you. How? I asked. With what money? I have power you can't imagine, Richard lied. I have connections. I can make sure no nursery in the state buys from you. I can have this land rezoned as a waste disposal site. I can bulldoze this house with you inside it. Hunter, sensing his father's aggression, decided to join in. He walked over to my greenhouse, the one Grandpa and I built with our own hands. It was glass and cedar, filled with rare orchids I was breeding. Nice glass house, Josh, Hunter said, picking up a heavy landscaping rock. Be a shame if it hailed. Hunter, put the rock down, I warned. My voice wasn't shaking anymore. Sign the paper, Hunter yelled, and he threw the rock. Crash. The sound of shattering glass was sickening. A large pane on the west side of the greenhouse exploded. Shards of glass rained down on my orchids. Sarah gasped, covering her mouth. Something inside me snapped. Not a hot snap like a firecracker, but a cold snap like a glacier breaking. I looked at the broken glass. Then I looked at Hunter, who was smirking, bending down to pick up another rock. That's enough, I said. I pulled out my phone. I didn't dial 911. I dialed the single number saved in my favorites. Arthur, I said into the phone, loud enough for them to hear. Ready and waiting, sir. Arthur's voice came instantly. I'd like to authorize a purchase, I said, staring dead at my father. Richard looked confused. Who is he calling? The police? Go ahead. I own the sheriff. I'm not calling the police, I told Richard. Then, into the phone. The debt package for Sterling Corporation. The Class B notes held by Vantage Capital. Are they still for sale? Richard went pale. Vantage Capital was his biggest creditor. They held the notes on his personal loans, the ones secured by his stock in the company. They are available, sir, Arthur confirmed. Price is $40 million. Current valuation is distress level. Buy them, I said. Full price. Execute immediately. Confirmed. Transferring funds. Transaction complete. You are now the majority holder of the Class B notes. I hung up the phone and slipped it back into my pocket. Richard was staring at me, his mouth slightly open. Who was that? What did you just say? Vantage Capital just sold your debt, I said coldly. To me. You? Hunter scoffed, tossing the rock aside. You can't even afford to fix that window. You're bluffing. Dad, let's just get the bulldozers. But Richard wasn't listening to Hunter. He was looking at his phone. A notification had just come through. His email pinged. He opened it. I watched his eyes scan the screen. I watched the blood drain from his face until he looked like a ghost. It's impossible, Richard whispered. The holder of record has changed. The founder's trust. He looked up at me, terror in his eyes. How? That trust. Dad locked it up. Nobody has access. The card was trash. I finished for him. You said it was trash, Dad. I took a step forward. Richard took a step back. Get off my land, I said. And take your leased Lamborghini with you. If Hunter throws one more rock, I won't call the sheriff. I'll call the repo men. I own the note on that car too, by the way. Check the shell company. Hunter looked at his dad. Dad? What is he talking about? Get in the car, Richard whispered, his voice trembling. But Dad, the farm. Get in the SAR. Richard screamed, his voice cracking. Hunter scrambled into the Lamborghini, terrified. Richard looked at me one last time. There was no arrogance left, just confusion and fear. He couldn't understand how the son he bullied for 30 years had suddenly become the giant looming over him. We'll discuss this, Richard said, trying to regain some dignity. We'll have a meeting. This is a misunderstanding. Go, I said. They drove off. The Lamborghini spun its tires, spraying gravel, but it lacked the confidence of its arrival. The Rolls-Royce followed slowly, like a funeral procession. I turned to Sarah. She was shaking. Did you just spend $40 million? She asked, her voice squeaking. Technically, the trust did, I said. I walked over to the greenhouse. I picked up a shard of glass. But yeah. Oh my God, Sarah exhaled, leaning against the porch post. What happens now? Now, I said, looking at the dust settling on the driveway. I wait. Desperate men do stupid things. He's gonna try to hit back. I was right. Took exactly 48 hours. I was in the barn, fixing the tractor, when a courier arrived. Not a black helicopter this time, just a regular bike messenger. He handed me a thick, cream-colored envelope with gold leaf embossing. I opened it. The Sterling Corporation Annual Charity Gala. The Sapphire Ball. Saturday, 7 p.m. The Grand Ballroom, the Ritz-Carlton. There was a handwritten note clipped to the invitation. It was from Elena. Joshua, your father feels terrible about the misunderstanding at the farm. We want to make it right. Come to the gala. We are announcing a new strategic partnership that will solve all financial issues. Please come. We are family after all. Elena, I handed the note to Sarah. She read it and frowned. It's a trap, she said immediately. They never invite us to the gala. They say we don't fit the aesthetic. I know, I said. He's planning something. He says he has a strategic partner. He's lying. He doesn't know I'm the one holding his debt yet. He just knows it's the trust. He thinks he can find another investor to pay off the trust. So what do we do? Sarah asked. Stay home. I looked at the oil grease on my hands. I looked at the invite. No, I said. We go. Josh, we don't even have clothes for this. Last time we went to a family dinner. Elena made fun of my dress for 3 hours. Not this time, I said. I pulled out the black titanium card. It caught the light of the barn, gleaming darkly. Arthur, I said into the air, knowing he was probably listening via the card's concierge app I'd installed. My phone rang instantly. Sir, Arthur asked. I need a suit, I said, and a dress for my wife. Not off the rack. I want the kind of clothes that make people afraid to talk to you. Understood, Arthur said. Bespoke fittings will arrive at your home at 2 p.m. And for transportation, I looked at my rusty Ford F-150. Then I looked at the corner of the barn, under a dusty tarp. It was a project I had been working on for 5 years, scraping together spare parts, trading labor for engine components. A 1988 Porsche 911 Turbo S. It was black, sleek, and dangerous, but it needed an engine rebuild I couldn't afford. Arthur, I said, can you get a team of Porsche mechanics here? I have a 911 that needs to wake up. Consider it done, sir. I hung up. I looked at Sarah. She was grinning. We're going to crash the party? She asked. No, I said, wiping the grease from my hands. We're not crashing it. We're buying it. The next 3 days were a blur of activity that my quiet farmhouse had never seen. A team of Italian tailors arrived in a van. They didn't speak much English, but they measured Sarah and me with the intensity of surgeons. For Sarah, they chose a deep emerald green silk gown that fit her like a second skin. It was elegant, regal, and made her look like a queen. When she walked out of the bedroom, I forgot how to breathe for a second. For me, they crafted a tuxedo in midnight blue, so dark it looked black under yellow light. It wasn't flashy. It didn't have the shimmering lapels my father loved. It was understated. It whispered power rather than screaming it. Meanwhile, in the barn, for mechanics from a specialized shop in Chicago were working around the clock on the Porsche. Arthur had overnight parts from Germany. When they fired up the engine on Friday night, the sound was guttural. A low, throaty growl that shook the dust off the rafters. It sounded like a beast waking up from a long coma. But while we prepared, I kept an eye on Richard. Arthur sent me daily reports. Richard was frantic. He was calling everyone in town. Hedge fund managers, loan sharks, even old rivals, trying to secure a bridge loan to pay off the trust. He was telling everyone that he had a mystery investor lined up for the gala who would save the company. He was lying to buy time. He planned to use the gala to announce a fake deal, pump the stock price up, and then sell his personal shares before the crash. It was classic Richard, pump and dump, and he needed me there as a prop. I suspected he planned to announce that I had agreed to sell the farm, using that as collateral to reassure the banks. He was going to use me one last time. Saturday night arrived. The air was crisp. I helped Sarah into the passenger seat of the Porsche. She looked nervous. You ready? I asked, sliding into the driver's seat. The leather smelled new. The engine idled with a restrained aggression. No, she admitted. But I want to see Elena's face when she sees this dress. I smiled. That's the spirit. We drove to the city. The Ritz-Carlton was glowing with lights. A line of limousines and luxury cars stretched down the block. Valets were running back and forth. Paparazzi were flashing cameras at the local celebrities and business tycoons. When the 1988 Porsche rolled up, the valet paused. It wasn't a modern supercar like Hunter's Lamborghini. It was vintage. It was class. It stood out among the sea of modern plastic and chrome. I stepped out. The valet rushed over to open Sarah's door. We walked up the red carpet. I saw the flashbulbs pop. They didn't know who we were. Usually the gardener's son entered through the side door, but the clothes and the car commanded attention. At the entrance to the ballroom, Elena was holding court. She was wearing a silver dress that looked expensive but loud. She was laughing fake laughs with the wife of a senator. When she saw us, her smile faltered. Her eyes scanned Sarah's dress, looking for a loose thread, a cheap seam. She found nothing. Her eyes narrowed. "Joshua," she said, her voice tight. "And Sarah, you cleaned up." "Hello, Elena," Sarah said, smiling sweetly. "You look shiny." Elena's jaw tightened. "Go find your seats. Table 19. It's near the kitchen. We didn't want you to feel uncomfortable among the executives." "Actually," I said, pulling out the invite, "we'll just mingle for now." I guided Sarah past her into the room. The ballroom was packed. Chandeliers dripped crystal. Waiters circulated with champagne. I saw my father near the stage, surrounded by a group of nervous-looking board members. He looked sweaty. He was drinking scotch too fast. Hunter was at the bar, loud and obnoxious, bragging to a group of young women. "So I told the cop, do you know who my dad is?" Hunter was saying, gesturing with a martini glass. "And he let me go." Bam. I walked over to the bar. "Sparkling water with lime," I told the bartender. Hunter turned. He looked at my tuxedo. He blinked. "Who did you rent the tux from?" Hunter sneered. "Prom night special?" "It's bespoke, Hunter," I said, taking my water. "And unlike your car, it's fully paid for." Hunter flushed. "You think you're tough because you got lucky with some legal loophole on the farm? Dad's going to crush you tonight. He's got a plan." "Oh, I know," I said. "I'm here to see it." I walked away. I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was the titanium card. A message on the connected phone. "Arthur, the trap is set. The screen control is linked to your device. Whenever you are ready, sir." I squeezed Sarah's hand. "It's almost time." A chime sounded. The lights dimmed. Richard walked up to the podium. A spotlight hit him. He put on his best CEO smile, the one that had fooled investors for 20 years. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard boomed into the microphone, "welcome to the Sapphire Ball. Tonight is a night of celebration. Tonight, I am proud to announce that Sterling Corporation is entering a new golden age." Applause scattered through the room. The board members looked skeptical. "There have been rumors," Richard continued, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper. "Rumors of financial trouble. Lies spread by our enemies." He glanced at me in the back of the room. "But I am here to tell you that we have secured a new, unlimited line of credit from a private sovereign wealth fund. The Sterling Empire is stronger than ever." The room murmured. This was big news, if it was true. "And to demonstrate our unity," Richard said, gesturing toward me, "my son Joshua has graciously agreed to merge his grandfather's estate back into the family holding." "Joshua, stand up." The spotlight swung around the room, searching for me. Sarah grabbed my arm. "He's doing it. He's lying." "I know," I said. The spotlight found me. I didn't stand up nervously. I stood up slowly, buttoning my jacket. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I began to walk toward the stage. "Yes, come up here, son." Richard waved, sweating profusely now. "Come sign the accord." I walked up the stairs. The room was silent. I stood next to my father at the podium. He leaned in, whispering through his teeth, "Play along or I kill your dogs. Smile." I looked at the audience. I looked at the camera crews. "May I?" I asked, pointing to the microphone. Richard hesitated, then stepped back, grinning like a shark. Of course. Tell them. I gripped the podium. My father is right about one thing, I said. My voice echoed in the massive hall. There is a new investor. Richard nodded encouragingly. But he is wrong about the rest, I continued. There is no merger. There is no agreement. Richard's smile froze. Joshua, stick to the script, he hissed. And, I said, looking directly at the camera, Sterling Corporation is not entering a golden age. It is entering receivership. The crowd gasped. What are you doing? Richard grabbed my arm. Security. Get him off. Get your hands off me, I said quietly. I pulled out the black card. I tapped it against the NFC reader built into the digital lectern. Beep. Behind us, the giant screen that displayed the Sterling logo flickered. Richard turned around. The logo disappeared. In its place, a massive image appeared. It was a security camera photo from 3 days ago. It showed Richard cutting the black card with scissors. Then, text appeared in red block letters. Unauthorized destruction of asset detected. Founders protocol activated. All assets frozen. What is this? Richard screamed. Turn it off. Technical difficulties. He waved at the sound booth. But the technicians were helpless. The screen was locked. A new line of text appeared. Current debt owner. The trust. Current trustee. Joshua Sterling. The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. 500 of Chicago's elite stared at the screen. Then at me, then at Richard. You? Richard whispered, staring at the screen. You own the debt? I bought it on Tuesday, I said into the mic, while you were threatening to bulldoze my greenhouse. But the card, cut it. It was trash. The chip still worked, Dad, I said. And so do I. The realization hit Richard like a physical blow. He staggered back, clutching the podium for support. The man who had terrorized my childhood, who had loomed over me like a giant, suddenly looked small, old, defeated. Security! Hunter screamed from the floor. He rushed the stage, his face red with drunken rage. He hacked it. Arrest him. 2 burly security guards started to move toward me. I held up the card. Arthur. I said into my lapel mic now. The doors to the ballroom burst open. But it wasn't the hotel security. It was a team of 6 men in dark suits with earpieces, followed by 4 uniformed officers from the sheriff's department. The real sheriff, not the one Richard claimed to own. Leading them was a man in a gray suit holding a briefcase. It was Mr. Davis, the lawyer. The security guards stopped in their tracks. They recognized authority when they saw it. Hunter froze halfway up the stairs. Mr. Davis walked up to the stage. He didn't look at Richard. He looked at me and nodded respectfully. Mr. Sterling, Davis said into the microphone, addressing me. The paperwork is finalized. The foreclosure on the personal assets of Richard Sterling has been executed due to breach of the debt covenant. Foreclosure! Elena shrieked from table 19. She stood up, knocking over a glass of wine. You can't do that. We live there. Not anymore, Mrs. Sterling, Davis said calmly. The locks were changed 10 minutes ago. Richard lunged at me. It was a desperate, flailing motion. You ungrateful bastard. I gave you life. I sidestepped him easily. He stumbled and fell onto the stage floor. The cameras flashed blindingly. The great Richard Sterling, crawling on the floor of the Ritz-Carlton. You gave me nothing, I said, looking down at him. Grandpa gave me a legacy. You tried to throw it in the trash. I turned to the sheriff. Sheriff, I believe there are outstanding warrants for embezzlement regarding the pension fund. The sheriff stepped forward. Richard Sterling, you are under arrest for securities fraud and embezzlement. They hauled him up. The handcuffs clicked. That sound, metal on metal, was louder than the applause had been. Joshua, Richard yelled as they dragged him away. Fix this. I'm your father. Use the card. Pay them off. I watched him go. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I just felt Done. Hunter was standing on the stairs, shaking. He looked at me, then at the exit where his father had just disappeared. You ruined everything, Hunter whispered. No, Hunter, I said. I just stopped paying for the illusion. I looked at the crowd. They were staring at me with a mix of fear and awe. They were the same people who had ignored me for years. Now they were wondering if they owed me money too. The drinks are on me, I said into the mic. Enjoy the night. I walked off the stage. The ballroom was chaotic, but a path cleared for Sarah and me as we walked toward the exit. People stepped back, whispering, "That's Joshua Sterling. He owns the whole thing. Did you see his father's face?" Elena tried to intercept us near the door. Her mascara was running. She grabbed my sleeve. "Josh, honey," she pleaded, her voice trembling with a fake sweetness that made my skin crawl. "You know I had nothing to do with this. It was all Richard. He made me spend the money. I can testify against him. Just don't take the car. Please, I need the car." I looked at her hand on my sleeve. The diamond bracelet she wore was bought with money meant for the employee pension fund. "Elena," I said, gently removing her hand, "the car belongs to the company. The company belongs to the trust. And the trust doesn't like thieves." "I'm your mother," she hissed. "My mother is buried on the farm you tried to sell," I said. "Goodbye, Elena." We walked out into the cool night air. The valet brought the Porsche around. I tipped him $100. As we drove away, leaving the lights of the Ritz-Carlton behind, Sarah exhaled a breath she seemed to have been holding for hours. "Are you okay?" she asked. I gripped the steering wheel. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a strange hollowness. "I don't know. I thought I would feel better. Watching him fall. It was pathetic." "It was necessary," Sarah said. "He would have destroyed us, Josh. He would have destroyed the farm." "I know," I said. My phone rang. It was Arthur. "Mr. Sterling," Arthur said. "The assets have been secured. The board of directors has scheduled an emergency meeting for Monday morning. They wish to vote you in as chairman." "I don't want to be chairman," I said immediately. "I'm a landscape architect, Arthur. I don't want to sit in a glass tower." "Understood," Arthur said. "However, you own 51%. You can appoint a proxy. Or you can change the company." "Change it." "Your grandfather always hated that the company stopped building things and started moving money around. Perhaps you can return it to its roots." I thought about that. I thought about the nursery, the trees, the feeling of creating something that lasted. "We'll talk on Monday, Arthur," I said. "For now, I'm going home." "Very good, sir." "Oh, and Mr. Sterling." "Yes. Your grandfather would have been very proud tonight. He always said the quiet ones are the dangerous ones." I hung up. We drove back to the farm in silence. When we pulled into the driveway, it was midnight. The moon was full, illuminating the broken glass of the greenhouse. It looked like a scar on the land. But scars heal. I got out of the car. I walked over to the broken window. I picked up a piece of glass. I pulled out the black card. The tape was starting to peel off the edge where I had fixed it days ago. It was just plastic and metal, but it was also a shield. "Josh," Sarah called from the porch. "Come inside. It's over." I looked at the fields. They were safe. Mom's grave was safe. "Yeah," I said. "It's over." But as I walked up the steps, I knew it wasn't really over. Owning an empire brings new wolves. But this time I wasn't a sheep. I was the shepherd, and I had a very big stick. 3 months. That is approximately 90 days, or 2,160 hours. It sounds like a long time, but when you are dismantling a 40-year-old lie, it feels like a blink of an eye. Most people think that when you win, when the bad guys get arrested and you get the money, the credits roll and everyone lives happily ever after. That's Hollywood. Real life is messier. Real life is what happens after the police cars drive away, and you are left standing in the wreckage with a broom in your hand. Monday morning came like a freight train. I didn't take the helicopter Arthur offered. I didn't take a limo. I drove my Ford F-150 into the city. It was still rusted on the wheel wells. It still rattled when I went over 60. But when I pulled into the underground parking garage of the Sterling Tower, the security guard didn't wave me away. He stood up, straightened his tie, and opened the gate. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," he said. He looked nervous. "Morning, Frank," I said. "How's the hip?" Frank blinked. He had worked there for 10 years, and Richard had never once learned his name, let alone asked about his surgery. It's better, sir. Thank you." I parked in the spot marked CEO. My truck looked ridiculous next to the sleek Mercedes and BMWs of the other executives. Oil dripped onto the pristine concrete. I didn't care. I took the elevator to the top floor. The doors opened, and the silence hit me. Usually, this floor was buzzing with assistants running errands for my father. Phones ringing, the sound of self-importance. Today it was a graveyard. Arthur was waiting for me in the conference room. He wasn't a disembodied voice on the phone anymore. He was a real man, tall, impeccable in a gray suit, with silver hair and eyes that had seen everything. "Sir," Arthur said with a slight bow, "the board is assembled." I looked through the glass walls. 12 men and women in suits were sitting around the mahogany table. These were the people who had enabled my father. They had looked the other way while he raided the pension funds. They had signed off on the fake audits. They had laughed at his jokes and drunk his scotch while the company burned. I walked in. I was wearing clean jeans, a button-down shirt, and my work boots. They stood up. It was instinct. They smelled the power shift. "Sit down," I said. I didn't sit at the head of the table. I leaned against the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. "Mr. Sterling," one of them began, a man named Henderson, the CFO. "We want to assure you that we were unaware of Richard's specific financial maneuvers. We were victims of his deception as well." I turned to look at him. "Henderson, you signed the quarterly reports. You approved the lease on the Lamborghini for a consultant who turned out to be my 25-year-old brother." Henderson turned pale. "That was categorized as marketing expenses." "It's over," I said. "All of it. The private jets, the galas, the consulting fees for family members. The Sterling Corporation you knew is dead." "But the market," another board member protested. "If we show weakness, the stock will tank. We need a strategy. We need to spin this." "We aren't spinning anything," I said. "We are pruning." That afternoon, I fired the entire C-suite. 7 executives. I gave them 10 minutes to clear their desks. Security escorted them out. It was brutal, yes, but a tree with rot in the trunk cannot be saved by trimming the leaves. You have to cut the trunk. I spent the next weeks digging. It was worse than Arthur had told me. My father hadn't just borrowed money. He had hollowed out the company. He had sold the land rights to our distribution centers. He had stopped funding R&D 5 years ago. He was running a shell game, moving cash from one account to another to pay the interest on yesterday's loans. I worked 18-hour days. I didn't do it for the money. I had the black card for that. I did it for the 3,000 employees who actually did the work. The factory workers, the drivers, the logistics managers. They were the ones who would lose their homes if this ship sank. I used the trust's capital to buy back the debt. I refinanced the predatory loans. I reinstated the pension fund, filling the hole my father had dug with $50 million of Grandpa's accumulated dividends. And then I went to see them. Richard had been released on bail pending trial. He was on house arrest. But since the bank had foreclosed on the mansion and the penthouse, he had nowhere to go. I had arranged a small apartment for him on the south side. It was clean. It was safe. But it was small. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchenette. No view. I knocked on the door. Elena opened it. She wasn't wearing couture anymore. She was wearing sweatpants. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. Without the expensive makeup and the jewelry, she looked older. Tired. "What do you want?" she spat. "Came to gloat." "I brought groceries," I said, holding up a paper bag. She stared at the bag. Pride warred with hunger in her eyes. The courts had frozen all their assets. They had zero access to cash. "We don't need your charity," she said. But she stepped aside to let me in. The apartment smelled of stale coffee and resentment. Richard was sitting in a recliner, staring at a small television. He looked shrunken. The bluster, the booming voice, the physical presence. It was all gone. He was just a man in a cardigan. "Hello, Dad," I said. He didn't look away from the TV. "Get out." "I just wanted to make sure you were settled," I said, putting the groceries on the counter. "The lawyer says the trial is set for November." Richard laughed, a dry, hacking sound. He finally turned to look at me. His eyes were red-rimmed. "You think you're smart, don't you?" he sneered. "Playing the hero. Saving the company." "I saved the employees," I corrected. "I saved the legacy." "Legacy?" Richard stood up, shaky but angry. "I built that name. I put Sterling on the map. Your grandfather was a farmer who got lucky with patents. I was the businessman. You were a gambler," I said calmly. "And you bet with money that wasn't yours." "I was doing it for you," he shouted. "For Hunter. To give you a life." "No," I said. "You were doing it for the applause. You wanted to be the man of the year. You wanted the Rolls-Royce. You didn't care about us. If you cared, you wouldn't have cut that card. You wouldn't have tried to steal my farm." Richard slumped back into the chair. "It's not fair," he muttered. "I was so close. One more deal. I just needed one more deal." I looked at him and realized he would never understand. He was incapable of seeing his own fault. In his mind, he was the victim. I was the villain who pulled the rug out. "Where is Hunter?" I asked Elena. "He left," she said, lighting a cigarette with a shaking hand. "He couldn't handle the dimensions of this place. He's staying with a friend." "A friend?" I raised an eyebrow. "Hunter doesn't have friends. He has an entourage. And entourages don't stick around when the credit card is declined." I found Hunter 2 days later. He wasn't with a friend. He was sleeping in his car, not the Lamborghini which had been repossessed the night of the gala, but an old Honda Civic he had bought with the cash from pawning his watches. I found him parked behind a 24-hour diner. I tapped on the window. Hunter woke up with a start. He looked terrible. Unshaven, greasy hair, wearing a designer hoodie that was stained with ketchup. He rolled down the window. "Go away, Josh. I've got a tire iron in here." "I'm sure you do," I said. "Open the door." He hesitated, then unlocked it. I sat in the passenger seat. The car smelled of fast food and body odor. "Nice office," I said. "Screw you," Hunter mumbled. "I'm just between places. I'm working on a startup. Crypto. It's gonna be huge." "Hunter," I said. "Stop. I don't need your help," he yelled, slamming his hand on the steering wheel. Tears welled up in his eyes. "I don't need your pity. You think you're better than me because Grandpa liked you best." "Grandpa didn't like me best," I said. "He just trusted me to work. He knew you were drowning, Hunter. Dad taught you that money is magic. It's not. It's just fuel. If you don't have an engine, fuel just burns you alive." I reached into my pocket. I didn't pull out the black card. I pulled out a business card. "What's this?" Hunter asked, wiping his nose. "It's a contact for a crew chief I know. In landscaping." Hunter stared at me. "You want me to mow lawns?" "No. I want you to learn how to lay stone. Hardscaping. This brutal work. Your back will hurt. Your hands will bleed. You'll hate me every day." "Why would I do that?" "Because it pays $20 an hour," I said. "And because for the first time in your life, when you go to sleep at night, you'll know you earned that sleep. Nobody gave it to you. You took it from the earth." Hunter looked at the card. He looked at his shaking hands. "I can't," he whispered. "Everyone will laugh at me. The Hunter Sterling, digging ditches." "Let them laugh," I said. "The people who laugh aren't your friends. And the people who respect you for it, those are the ones you keep." I opened the door to leave. "Josh," he called out. I stopped. Did Dad really steal the pension money? I looked back at him. Yeah, he did. Hunter nodded slowly. He looked down at the business card. Does the crew chief know I'm your brother? No, I said. I told him your name is Hunt. And I told him if you're late to fire you. I closed the door. The hardest part wasn't dealing with the villains. It was dealing with the change in myself. I had money now. Infinite money, effectively. I could have bought a yacht. I could have bought an island. But every time I looked at that titanium card, I felt the weight of it. Sarah and I stayed in the farmhouse. We fixed the greenhouse. We replaced the roof. But we didn't expand. We didn't build a gate. One night, Arthur called me. Sir, he said, I have a query regarding the annual dividend of the trust. It is approximately $60 million this year. Where would you like it allocated? I sat on the porch watching the fireflies. Arthur, do you know what my grandfather's favorite tree was? The oak, sir. Specifically, the bur oak. Because it grows slow, I said, and its roots go deep. Arthur, I want to start a new division of the trust. We're going to build trade schools, not universities. Schools for carpenters, electricians, plumbers, farmers. Free tuition. But they have to build houses for the homeless as part of their graduation project. A circular economy of philanthropy, Arthur mused. Samuel would have liked that. And Arthur. Yes, sir. The Porsche. Is it ready? It is parked in your barn, sir. The mechanics finished the final tuning an hour ago. I hung up. I walked to the barn. Under the tarp, the 1988 Porsche 911 Turbo S sat gleaming in the moonlight. It was perfect. Not flashy like a new Ferrari. It was a machine of purpose. I opened the door and sat inside. I ran my hand over the steering wheel. I opened the glove box. I wanted to put the registration papers inside. But there was something already there. A letter. It wasn't in an envelope. It was just a folded piece of yellow legal pad paper, tucked into the owner's manual. I unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakable. Grandpa Samuel. Joshua, if you are reading this, it means two things. One, I am dead. And two, you finally fixed this damn car. I knew you would. Richard wanted to sell it for scrap. He said it was too old, too much trouble. That's the difference between you and your father. He sees the rust. You see the metal underneath. I'm leaving the card to you, not because I love you more, but because you are the only one who doesn't need it. You are already rich, Josh. You have hands that can build. You have a heart that can forgive. You have a wife who loves you for you, not the name. The money in the trust isn't the gift. The gift is the freedom to say no. Say no to greed. Say no to the easy way out. Say no to letting them break you. Drive fast, kid. But keep your eyes on the road. Grandpa. I sat in the dark barn, in the driver's seat of a 40-year-old car, and I wept. I wept for the old man who saw me when I felt invisible. I wept for the father I never really had. And I wept because, finally, the war was over. 6 months later. The seasons turn quickly in Wisconsin. The lush green of summer had given way to the burning reds and golds of autumn. And now, the first frost of winter was dusting the fields. I stood at the edge of the property line, looking out over the new expansion. It wasn't a condo development. It wasn't a strip mall. It was an orchard. 5,000 apple trees, planted in neat military rows, stretching as far as the eye could see. And in the middle of it, a large timber frame building with smoke curling from the chimney. The Sterling School of Agronomy. I adjusted my scarf. The wind was biting, but I liked it. Felt real. Daddy! I turned around. A little boy, barely 3 years old, was running toward me in a puffy snowsuit that made him look like a walking marshmallow. It wasn't my son. Sarah was still 6 months pregnant with our first. This was Liam, the son of one of the students at the school. I scooped him up. Hey, buddy, where's your mom? She's driving the tractor. Liam pointed excitedly toward the fields. I smiled. His mom was a single mother from Chicago who had lost her job when my father's previous shell companies imploded. She was one of the first applicants to the program. She was learning to manage soil pH levels and grafted rootstocks. She had a future now. Sarah walked up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. She rested her chin on my shoulder. "You look like a lord surveying his kingdom," she teased. "Not a kingdom," I said, putting Liam down so he could run back to the building. "A garden. Kingdoms fall. Gardens grow." "Arthur called," Sarah said softly. The trial verdict came in. I stiffened slightly. I hadn't gone to the court. Couldn't watch. "And guilty on all counts," Sarah said. 12 years. No parole. 12 years. Richard would be 74 when he got out. He would miss his grandson's birth. He would miss the orchard blooming. He would sit in a concrete cell, surrounded by men who didn't care about his bespoke suits or his society galas. "And Elena?" I asked. "Probation. Community service. She's moving to Florida to live with her sister." "And Hunter?" Sarah smiled a genuine smile. "That's the interesting part. He didn't quit." I looked at her. "Really?" "The crew chief called me. Said Hunt is the slowest guy on the team and he complains more than anyone else. But he shows up. Every morning. 6 a.m. He's putting in the work, Josh." I felt a knot in my chest loosen. Maybe there was hope for the Sterling name yet. Not the corporate name, but the blood. "We should go see him," I said. "Maybe not today, but soon. Maybe buy him a beer. A cheap one." Sarah laughed. "Come on. The ceremony is starting." We walked toward the timber-frame building. Today was the official opening of the school. There were no news crews, no paparazzi, no red carpets, just the students, their families, and the instructors. I walked inside. The smell of sawdust and apple cider filled the air. It was the best smell in the world. Arthur was there, standing in the corner, trying to look inconspicuous in a cashmere coat. He nodded to me. I walked up to the small podium. It wasn't made of glass and steel like the one at the Ritz-Carlton. It was made of rough-hewn oak, built by the students. The room quieted down. I looked at the faces in the crowd. People looking for a second chance. People who had been told they were trash by the economy, by their bosses, by society. "My grandfather," I began, my voice steady, "gave me a gift once. It was a piece of plastic. My father thought it was garbage because it was old and scratched. He cut it in half." I pulled the two halves of the original black card from my pocket. They were still taped together with that yellowing Scotch tape. I had framed the new titanium card in my office, but I carried this one with me. "He didn't understand that value isn't about how shiny something is," I said. "Value is about what something can do. This card, it could open doors. But it couldn't build this school. Money didn't build this. You did." I held up the taped card. "We live in a world that is obsessed with the wrapper," I told them. "We want the flashy car, the perfect Instagram photo, the title. We think that if we look rich, we are rich. But I've seen what happens when you strip that away. I've seen a man with a Rolls-Royce cry because he has no soul left to sell." I looked at Sarah. She was beaming, her hand resting on her belly. "Real wealth," I said, "is the ability to sleep at night. It's the ability to look at a piece of land and see an orchard. It's the ability to be broken, cut in half like this card, and tape yourself back together and still work." I put the card back in my pocket. "Welcome to Sterling Roots," I said. "Now let's get to work." The applause wasn't polite. It was raucous. It was real. Later that evening, after the last student had left, I took the Porsche out. I drove down the county roads, the sun setting behind the hills, painting the sky in violet and orange. The engine of the 911 hummed behind me, a mechanical symphony. I shifted gears, feeling the connection between man and machine. I thought about the journey, the anger at the funeral, the shock at the ATM, the fear when the rocks hit the greenhouse, the triumph at the gala. Felt like a lifetime ago. I pulled over at the top of a hill that overlooked the farm. I killed the engine. The silence of the Wisconsin winter settled around me. I took out the taped-up card one last time. I thought about keeping it forever, a trophy. But then I remembered Grandpa's letter. The gift is the freedom to say no. I didn't need the card to remember who I was anymore. I didn't need the reminder of my father's cruelty. I had the orchard. I had the school. I had my brother, slowly finding his way back from the abyss. I had Sarah. I rolled down the window. The cold air rushed in. I peeled the tape off the card. The two halves separated in my hand. I looked at the chip, the unlimited access. "Thanks, Grandpa," I whispered. I didn't throw it away. I placed the two halves in the ashtray of the car. I would keep them, but not as a weapon, as a souvenir, a reminder that things can be broken and still be valuable. I started the car. The headlights cut through the dark. I turned the car around and headed home. Sarah was waiting. Dinner was on the stove. And tomorrow I had trees to plant. I am Joshua Sterling. I was the gardener. Now I am the owner. But really, I'm just the guy who learned that you can't judge a book by its cover, and you certainly can't judge a man by his credit card. Because in the end, plastic breaks. But roots run deep. We've reached the end of Joshua's journey, and what a ride it has been. From the humiliation of a funeral parlor to the quiet victory of an apple orchard. The story of The Black Card is a fantasy about unlimited wealth, yes. We all dream of finding that magic ATM that says, unlimited. But at its core, this isn't a story about money. It's a story about value versus price. Richard Sterling knew the price of everything, the cost of a Rolls-Royce, the value of a stock, the expense of a funeral, but he knew the value of nothing. He threw away his father's legacy because it looked like trash. He underestimated his son because Joshua wore work boots instead of Italian leather. Joshua, on the other hand, understood that true wealth isn't what you spend. It's what you build. He used the money not to escape his life, but to deepen it. He didn't buy a new identity. He reinforced the one he already had. There's a powerful lesson here for all of us, especially in a world that constantly tells us we need more to be happy. More likes, more followers, more zeros in the bank account. But the things that actually sustained Joshua when the storm hit were his skills, his wife's loyalty, and his grandfather's trust. Those are assets that no market crash can take away. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. If you had the unlimited card for one day, but you couldn't spend it on yourself, you could only use it to build something or help someone, what would you do? Would you build a school like Joshua? Would you pay off your parents' debts? Would you save a local business? Let me know in the comments below. Or, if you just enjoyed the ride and the justice served to Richard, leave a good in the comments so I know we're on the same page. Thank you for listening, for riding shotgun in the Porsche, and for seeing the value in the story. Until next time, keep your roots deep.